Okay, let's get into our interview for today. Before we do that, we want to thank our sponsor, that is Thirdzy, the PM Recovery Collagen protein that you need to incorporate into your nightly routine in order to sleep and recover better. I see that you have the
travel packs.
The travel packs with you. Well done. Congratulations. That is the way to go. I took one of those to Sacramento with me to sleep the stress away of dealing with family. We'll just leave it at that. And it worked like a charm. It's a collagen-based drink powder. It helps with joint and connective tissue repair. It has other ingredients like magnesium, L-theanine, GABA. Those are included to help calm your central nervous system and support deep and REM sleep. Tastes great, dissolves easily in water. I look forward to taking it at night because it actually does taste really good. And it has made a huge difference in my sleep game. I'll say it before, said it before, I'll say it again. I need more sleep, but the sleep that I am getting is of higher quality because of Thirdzy. Allows me to get up on a consistent basis at 4 a.m., do the 5 a.m. CrossFit class, and then start my day. So it has made a huge difference in my routine, and it's actually helped me improve my fitness as well. If you guys want to try it out, you can go to thirdzy.com. You can use our code TEF, and you will save 20%, and you will optimize your sleep and your recovery. Again, that's Thirdzy, THIRDZY.com, and use our code TEF. All right, our guest today is Pat Vellner. I spoke with him earlier today. He talks about some of the things that have been announced at the CrossFit Games, like Chad, like the run swim event, and what he thinks about this 95% of events being indoors. And talks about the training and how it's going right now. And the post that he recently made where he said, "This sucks and I'm beat up. This is hard." And then also talks about his legacy in the sport and what it would mean to him if he won the games and what it would mean if he didn't, when it is time for him to hang it up. So here's my conversation with Pat Vellner. Pat, thanks so much for being here. How you doing, man?
I'm hanging in there, Sean.
Yeah, you got some. You're what, 3 weeks away from a move and getting settled in a new place. How's that going?
It's been busy. It's just like there's a lot of life going on. And so I'm trying to train in between massive life events. But yeah, we just moved from the West Coast to much farther east. I landed about 3 weeks ago. We're building our new house, which isn't ready yet. So I'm living with my wife's family and, doing all of that, having the 2 young kids and trying to figure out what to do with them in the daytime. I'm trying to train, and it's been a lot, but we're okay. I wouldn't say stress is at an all-time low, but we're getting through it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what's coming up because there's some things that have been announced for the CrossFit Games. First off, the first one that came out was Chad. What were your thoughts when you heard about that workout being deployed at the CrossFit Games?
It's a bit of a triple down on the old step up, hey?
Yeah, you didn't like it the first time here. Now do 1,000.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope that the twist that's coming with it is going to make it interesting because it's not interesting. So I don't know. I think that it's just it's going to be what it is. Like you're just going to have to do it. I kind of hope that we do step overs instead of step ups because otherwise I think it's going to be a judging fiasco one way or another. Whether it's counting to 1,000 or whether it's just some people are allowed to be softer than others and you get a half-second advantage every rep for 1,000, that adds up pretty fast. So I hope it goes well. I hope it's everything they wanted out of it. I've never done it before. I'm sure it'll be fine. It's just going to be a little bit boring. I'd advise everybody who's spectating to go grab a snack at that point.
Yeah, you will maybe want to have something open on a different screen and just pop in every now and then.
Depending, or it's a good time to like go grab a drink or grab a snack and make sure you're stocked up if you're going to stick around and watch the whole thing.
We know the first event too. It's that the run swim combination. I think it's 4 miles total. We don't know how that's going to be divvied up, but it's the first event. Okay, for you. It's in the water. How you were training today out in the lake. How do you approach something like that right out of the gates?
You have to not. I don't know. I think you just have to not over stress about it. Like the realities of it is depending on who you are and where your strengths lie in that workout, you do it differently. And guys who are really strong in the water can run harder and not pay for it. And if you're not as strong in the water, if you try to like run with some of the fastest runners in that pack, it's going to really mess you up in the water. So I think that's kind of what I did in 2017 when we did the run, swim, run in Madison. Is I'm a good runner, and I ran hard, and then I wasn't able to recover in the water well. So it cost me a lot on the back end of the workout. So it's like, I'm better now than then, but I think it's still the same kind of idea, right? Like you have to set yourself up for the swim, because in a 4 mile aggregate, let's say you run 3.5 miles and you swim a half mile, like an 800-meter swim is not nothing. Like if you're losing time quickly, like it's going to add up really fast. So when you really fall apart in the water, it's a lot worse than falling apart on land. So I think no matter what, you have to set yourself up to swim reasonably strong, and you want to be probably with a pack getting into the water so you can draft a little bit, and you're not totally trying to play catch up. But it's just, that's one where it almost doesn't matter what other people are doing. You just have to do whatever sets you up the best, and not stress out too much about it. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. It'll be what it'll be. It's not going to be my best finish of the games, but it'll be all right.
As long as it's not
a little bit. I kind of wish we were doing something more fun for the swim.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting a little tired of the old run swim combo.
It's effective, I guess. Simple but effective. Well, then that leads me actually to my next question. Is I remember when we talked to you when Adrian Bosman was now taking over as the head programmer for the individuals and the CrossFit Games. And I remember you said, like, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was about, you thought that Bos's stuff was going to be more about precision and execution. And I think that more or less has played out. Well, now Dave is back. You've been through his programming multiple times at the games. What's the biggest difference you think between Dave and Bos?
Kind of interesting. Hey, Bos came and programmed when we did that pool workout when he went. We actually did a pretty cool swim workout when he programmed it. And then we're back to run swim as soon as Dave comes back. Classic. But I don't know. I think Dave is more of a fan of the like grunt work. He's a durability testing guy. And I think that all that stuff comes from individual background, right? Like if you look at Dave's background and Bos's background, that just, it leaks over from what they did and what their exposure to fitness was personally over the course of a lifetime, leaks over into what they program. And I think it's always going to happen whether you try or to get rid of it or not. So I think that's always been Dave's MO. He's a big durability guy. He's a big grunt work guy. So, I think stuff like Chad is unsurprising to see come up. Like, to be honest, with Dave back at the helm, the first two announcements there are completely unsurprising. That's like basically exactly on brand. So I don't know. I think he does a good job generally. They both have of making the test overall make sense. So it's hard to judge things when you get two announcements. Sounds like we've got 2 outdoor events already out of 3 announced. And I think the promise when they moved to Dallas was that it was going to be 95% indoors, and that doesn't look like it's going to happen anymore. So, I'm a little concerned about things like that. I think Dave cares much less about things like that than I think Bosman does. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I hope that we kind of rein in the outdoor thing and the heat isn't as big of a factor, because I think a lot of athletes made decisions on how much time they were going to spend doing heat acclimation based on what they had said earlier in the season. And then to go back on that word would be really unfortunate and it would screw a lot of people over and potentially cause harm. But I think it's going to be fine, right? It's going to be more CrossFit Games. Like it's not, I don't think it's going to change, but it's all just shades of the same color. Like it's going to be similar enough. Like you said, I've been through it enough times. I've been successful with either of them programming, and I think it's going to be CrossFit. It's going to be the CrossFit Games. So I have a lot of faith that they're going to put together a good test.
Has he interviewed you yet?
No.
He hasn't. Okay. Now he's been asking athletes, do you have any questions for me? So what questions do you think you would ask Dave right now?
If he's monetized his YouTube.
Yeah, he probably should do that. He's getting some pretty good numbers.
I'm sure he has. But I don't know. I don't know if I have any real questions for Dave. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. if he does reach out for an interview, I'll put some thought towards it, but I haven't thought too much about it. I've got a lot of other shit going on right now. I haven't put too much thought into what I may or may not ask Dave Castro if he asks. So
just curious. There's this. Just forgive the length it's going to take me to ask this question, but there's an album that I listen to every now and then. It's a NoFX live album, and El Jefe, the guitar player, like when they're coming on stage, he's like, ah, shit, time to go to work. And that kind of reminds me of like, is that the attitude that you take going to the CrossFit Games now that this is going to be your 9th time? It's like, yeah, it's just time to go to work now. What's the level of excitement for you as you embark on your 9th individual appearance here?
It's a good question. I think it's more that way earlier in the season.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say when it's time for the Open and the quarterfinals and even the semifinals, that's a bit more what it feels like. I think at the games and even some of the other invitational events throughout the season, they all kind of have a different flavor to them, and it's a bit more exciting. Like you're finally there, like you finally got to the destination, and now it's time to like, yeah, of course you got to punch in, and then like now it's really worth it. Whereas the other ones were kind of just stepping stones. But I think there's always excitement around it. To be honest, the little announcements and little things like that we get, tidbits of information, they do a good job of creating buzz to keep you kind of engaged. But I think you get more excited for that kind of stage than earlier in the year. So yeah, there's always going to be a little bit of that, especially everything can become normal, right? And I think while I'll never take it for granted that I'm going to qualify for the games or that like it's going to be no big deal, I think you want to make it feel like a big deal every time. It is like it's your job. You're showing up for game day. Like it's the same thing. And I think, to be honest, it sounds lame to say it, but the more you can kind of have that approach to it, I actually think it gives you more success because you don't get quite as frazzled or rattled by little things. If it just feels really, you can trick yourself into making it feel normal in some way, then it's good, right? It's just another training day. You've done this 1,000 million times, and it's no sweat. So I think sometimes the athletes that have the most success are the ones who can kind of at least fake that it feels like, hey, this is no sweat. It's just another day at the office, and gonna go do these 100 thrusters, and off you go.
I found that being a father has certainly changed my perspective on a lot of things. How has now having your second child, being a dad, affected your perspective on what you do and how you do it?
It's a good question. I don't think I live my life a lot very compartmentalized, I think. So I don't think that it's changed a lot of how I approach my training or things like that. But fortunately the sport we're in is not it's not so reckless that I feel like I'm losing a step because I'm unwilling to, take risks or things like that. It's not like I'm risking a big crash that's going to maim me in some way and take me away from my family. Like those just aren't the realities of our sport. So I think more recently, and I think this is kind of a games training reality, is like you're tired a lot. So I've got a 3-year-old who like wants to play actively all the time, and it feels like I'm letting him down sometimes if I'm like end of the day and I just want to like shut down or melt into the couch, and he's like jumping up and down to do something because now you're home. And so I try more and more to be present for those things, and just like whether you like it or not, do it, because I think those days are limited. And it's easy to forget that and be focused on like, my days competing are limited too, and try to make the most out of those things while you have them. But it works both ways. And I think if I'm too head down focused on that stuff, and then you pick your head up and now he's like 15 and he doesn't want to play anymore, that's tragic. So I'm trying to do more of it again now with the move and things like that. I think everybody's really living on top of each other. So it's sort of like this time period is a bit hectic, but I think I'm more and more, I'm trying to do a lot of like very intentional time with both kids. And Ethan's only like 5 months, not even 5 months old, almost 5 months old. So he's starting to come laughing and giggling and smiling at you and stuff like that. So you're getting a lot more back. And I think I try to be more intentional with my time. I think right now the biggest challenge, to be honest, is doing the same thing with my wife, because I feel like we're just like so on to the next step, focused on things, building the house, taking a meeting, doing a call, off to training, off to this, like, and I think it'll be nice when the dust settles in a few months here, to just actually spend some time, all of us together, and enjoy the new place we're living, and go explore a little bit, because it's just it's a hectic time to move. Like, I had a lot of people say like, you're insane for like middle of the season, like right before semifinals, I'm like packing up my house and selling. And then we moved right after semis, sold our house during semis, and then coming here and doing everything, and basically having an interim home while the other one gets finished, and then moving again. And it's not the best timing, but there's no such thing as great timing. It's always going to be hectic for some reason. So, it made sense for us, and we're willing to deal with the short-term pain of it, to get to the other side quickly. And then, we'll celebrate Christmas in our new house, and it'll be great.
That's awesome.
But it's just, I think that you try, you do your best, right? I think you're never trying to neglect anyone, and it's harder sometimes than others. So I think after the games is done, there's a lot more time available to spend, and I'm looking forward to that, frankly.
You recently had a post, speaking of being tired and going through training on Instagram, where you were pretty honest about stuff, saying how this is the worst part of games training. I'm beat up. This sucks. And that is I think that's a rare take, or a rare moment of honesty from an athlete, because I think everybody right now is, I feel great. Body's awesome. Prep's going really well. Like, why did you feel necessary to put that out?
Because everybody else is doing that.
Yeah.
Also, it was Sean, I'm not kidding. It was a really bad day. Like, and sometimes you're just looking to scream into the void, and that's kind of what Instagram is. So, I think it's important to do that. I'm doing some work with the mentorship group for the teen athletes this year as well. And it just was like, it sucked. And it happens every year. And I have this conversation every year. And I was having like a vent session with Michelle, just being like, I cannot do anything right. Like, surely we're missing the mark in training, or something's wrong, because I feel like I can't perform, and I have no confidence in my ability to perform right now. And it's about a month away from the games, and every year about a month away from the games, I have this exact same thing. And it's like, no matter how many years I do it, you can't help yourself. And I think part of the realities of training at that level is it's not just physically challenging, like, it's very emotionally taxing, it's mentally taxing. And so you just become like, you're balanced on a knife edge, right? Like, you're volatile. So you have a bad day like that, and you feel like the world is like crashing. And then you go have a bite to eat, cool off a little bit, and you're like, I was maybe overreacting a little bit. Like, my rational self knows that, like, you've done this so many times, and this is always how it is. And it's like important to remind yourself that. So I just think it's as important for other people to see it as just to show yourself that as well. And then, like, talking to some of the younger athletes, like, that was sort of part of the point too. I was like, man, hey, by the way, guys, this is how I felt today. And I feel like it every year. And so, I think it's just Instagram, and what every athlete's saying is not real. And people do it in real life too. Like, the last day of the games, everybody's pretending that they feel great, right? And it's all a lot of posturing, and a lot of this and a lot of that. And maybe I'm getting too old for it. I feel like I get like, I've never really been the one who's going to be, it's like, last day, my legs hurt, my legs hurt, my back hurts, like, everything's sore. Like, if you're telling me it's not, then I know you're just lying. And I think there's nothing wrong with expressing some level of vulnerability. And just like, those are the realities, right? Like, that's the peek behind the curtain. I think that some people want to see is like, it's not, these people aren't superhuman. And I think that's kind of what makes it cool, right? Like, when we're competing, or when you're only watching competition, you only see one side of it sometimes. And I think what makes performances more impressive you watch, people like Tia win many years in a row, or people come back from injuries or whatever it is. Like, what makes it more exciting and more fun is that these people are not machines. They're people.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it. And the human element's really important. And I think it's like I said, as important to show it to other people as it is to just remind yourself sometimes.
Yeah. And obviously thank you for sharing that. And I know that's not easy, especially when you get a little emotional, but is part of it maybe what you think that this is a yes or no question? I hate asking yes or no questions, but hopefully you'll laugh. But do you think part of it is that athletes are afraid to show that because they don't want to seem like they're failing or that they're not at their peak?
Yeah, and I think there's some it's a big mental game, right? And I think that there's a fear of letting vulnerability in. And I think that to do the things that we do, sometimes you have to feel like you're unbeatable, or you can do anything. And I think the second you sort of let some of that in, of like, hey, I'm I'm losing a step here. Like, everybody's had that. The negative thoughts creep in, and once that happens, things can fall apart really fast. So sometimes the fake it till you make it approach is the right approach. And I think in competition it can be the only recourse. But in training, it's a different thing, right? And if you're just trying to slam your head against the wall repeatedly, 3 weeks, 4 weeks out from the games, that's not how you do it. Like, oh, I failed a lift 4 times today. Like, I'm gonna go for attempt 5, 6, 7, 8. Like, no, like, sometimes you got to cut your losses and just respect what's happening right now, because now is the time. But you have to put the face on sometimes, and you have to do it. So I think there's some fear of for one thing, like showing your belly to your competitors. Um, but not even just that. It's not letting yourself feel like you can be beaten, or you can let this darkness in, because the second you lose a little bit of that, you're done. Like, I've been watching a lot of the Tour de France lately,
Mhm.
and that when you see riders who, like, they crack, like, and mentally it's just like somebody makes a move and they can't catch them, and then they crack, and all of a sudden their pace drops significantly and they're completely dropped off. Like, that effect is super real, and that mental effect of, like, feeling like you're in it and you feeling like you're strong and can handle it is super important. And the second you feel like this is too much, or I'm overwhelmed, or whatever, I'm starting to get underwater, you can slide back real fast. So I think sometimes it's protective for that. um, but I think sometimes that's the difference between training and competing. Like, I think in competition, you have those conversations a little bit with your coaches or within your team, but you're never going to outwardly project that vulnerability. But in training, it's a little bit of a different thing. And it's also like, it's a longer game. Like, the
Mhm.
competition's 4 days, but when you're looking at like an 8-week prep for a competition, it's like that's a long time
Mhm.
to be hanging on like that and just white knuckling it, right? So I think it keeps you sane, and it lets you, like, have some little bit of balance, and it doesn't feel like you're just, you know, uh like, bottling it up for 8 weeks straight and you're gonna explode. So I try a little bit to let some of that out, because I think it's also healthy for the people around you to make you a little more pleasant to be around.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think in competition, it's just a different thing. And so I think, most people don't do it because I think the impression is that, uh, social media is a highlight reel and everybody wants to
Yeah.
see the best of you. Um, and I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I think that people want to see all of you. And I don't think that that's necessarily the healthiest thing either. I think you should
Yeah.
always hold something back for yourself. But I think that the vulnerability is important, and I think it's a big piece of sport in general. So, again, the people aren't people. We're just people are people. We're
Yeah.
just people. Everyone's like, so it's I think it's healthy for me, especially at this stage of my career. So I think everybody's process is slightly different, and I teach their own. But I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And this is the thing: if you think I'm not gonna be prepared come game time, like, you're mistaken. It's just like, it's the way it works.
Mhm.
Everybody manages and finds their way there differently, but once you're there, everybody's going to be prepared and be the best version of themselves, I think. So you do what you can to get there in your own
So
way.
while you're in the middle of your annual kind of freak out, what did Michelle say to kind of bring the temperature down a little bit?
But part of it's just that. She's like, "Oh, what's the date?" "Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. We're right on we're right on schedule." It's just like, and it's something different that sets it off kind of every year, but most of the time I'd say it's something weightlifting related, or like maybe paces on something
Mhm.
where you're just like, I can't, like, it's everything I can do to hit like 85% of what the expectation is right now. And I just like what I feel like the conversation you have in your head is like, maybe I just suck now. Like maybe this is just like I can't hang anymore. And then every year that's not the case. And then you have a taper and all of a sudden you feel amazing and everything's working great. And you're like, oh, I see. I was just at peak training. So I think she does a good job. She's like, look, move on from that. We know what this is. It's fine. Move on from it. It's okay. Like all it was a full effort for today, which is fine. And then you know, you're at like this was your peak volume week. So of course you're feeling that way. And you know, we're gonna start to come down the mountain after this and it'll be fine. So usually the idea then is to keep in touch on things too, is just say like, hey, in the next coming days and in the coming week, keep me posted on how you are feeling. Because if it doesn't, it's okay if that happens in a day or a couple days, but if it's like a week of feeling like that now, like we gotta address it, and there's maybe something bigger going on. So um, whenever you get there, it's like it's not surprising, but it's, you know, we're here now, and you got to pay attention
Mhm.
because again, like it's a pretty delicate balance, and if you're not careful at that point, you can be in a really rocky place to start the competition.
Yeah.
So you want to be coming in guns blazing, and that's the biggest thing. So the follow up in the coming week is she's like, make sure I know immediately if anything's not going well.
Mhm.
So we keep contact pretty constant.
Good. Looking at your last 3 years of the games, you've had a really, really solid run here. You know, 2 podium finishes, the other one was 6th. How are you getting, and I don't want to say better because you had a really good run at the beginning of your career, but how have you been able to maintain that level with as competitive as the field has gotten on the men's side? I mean, you have been just this constant through these years, and these it's gotten so much better at the top, yet you're always there. How have you been able to do that?
A little bit of luck probably, and intimidation, probably mostly intimidation.
You're intimidating other
I think
people, or you're just intimidated?
yeah, you can't let them think they can beat you,
Yeah.
and then it's fine. Then the work's already done.
Mhm.
No, I don't know. I think it's a lot of um I think you have to be paying attention. I think that, you know, I give Michelle a lot of credit for the evolution of her programming and her coaching and her learning, and the way that we've worked together as a team to just like continue to try to find the best path for me. Um, and she's done a lot of great work for me. So, you know, again, we communicate a lot all the time, and I'm not, you know, I'm not the healthiest I've ever been.
Mhm.
uh I've like over the course of a career, things add up, and yeah, like I'm always kind of, and I think everybody is to a certain degree, like battling with little things here and there. So we've done a good job of managing those things, and I think sometimes on game day, like those are the difference makers, right? Like the little decisions you've made leading up to allow you to be as healthy as you can be that weekend. I you know, I think that I owe a lot to my athletic background. I think one thing I have done very well is learn new things quickly. Like anytime something new comes up at the games, it's generally one of my top finishes. So I I do a good job of like stealing one or two top finishes a year based on nothing really, nothing I did in preparation anytime recently, but things I did 10 years ago that are still kind of paying dividends. So
Mhm.
that's what I mean by a little bit of luck, is it's
Yeah.
just sometimes you just can get a good balance. But um, and I think stubbornness is a big piece of it. I think um, I'm stubborn in a lot of ways. In like in my programming, in my training, and everything, I've trained a lot by myself, but I don't think it's ever done me a disservice. I think I'm really good at holding myself accountable, and I think that even in competition, when things go poorly, I'm really good at just like being tenacious and hanging on and staying with the group and doing whatever I have to do to claw and scratch and get myself back where I need to be. So, um, I think it's mostly things like that. I think they see the way some people compete, and there's like some people are just confident that they're gonna win every time, and there's a different kind of style of competing, and I don't think that's the way that I do it. But um, I think I'm sneaky, and I
Yeah.
think some people kind of forget sometimes. But I've got a lot of years of fitness bottled up, and I've managed to keep myself as healthy as I need to be. But we'll see how this year goes, right? There's no guarantees. And again, like I kind of said earlier, you try to treat everyone like exactly like that. Like there's no guarantees. Like there's no, just because I'm showing up this year doesn't mean I'm going to finish top 5 or top 10 or top 20. Like you got to earn your way the whole time. And reminding yourself of that nothing comes for free is pretty valuable. So I don't read a lot of my own press.
Couple more for you. One has to do with just the trash talking and the chirping. I know there's a lot of that goes on. A lot of it is good natured. But is there one that you've let go to someone where you're like, oh yeah, that did it? Like I got in that guy's head, or one that you heard where you said, oh man, I wish I would have said that.
Ooh, that's a good question.
And we don't need to name names or anything, but
I have to think if I had anyone that really hurt anybody. I don't think I've ever done any that's been like really
not like
gutless and
malicious, but
got
just like,
somebody.
yeah.
Um, what I really enjoyed though, recently was in the quarterfinals, what Colton and Dallin and Taylor and Jason were
Mhm.
doing. And they did the kind of live quarterfinals together. And
Yeah.
leading up to that, they were doing a bunch of stuff. And some of what Dallin and Jason have continued to do has been really, really good. They're funny. I think that it's kind of reviving some of that banter. I feel like a couple years ago with or not even, I feel like just last year after the Roman and Jeff thing, we kind of all had a good laugh about that, being like, that's not trash talk. Like that is like this whole thing got blown way out of
Mhm.
proportion. Like, what are we talking about? And then some of the guys like Jason who like played sports and deal with people that are actually trying to like rattle your head a little bit,
Mhm.
got talking and we chatting at Rogue and stuff like that. And we're like, people, we should do some more of this. Like and I think mostly you got to do it with people who get it and are
Yeah.
willing to kind of also give it back.
Mhm.
Nobody's out trying to overtly bully someone,
Right.
but like if I know like someone like Jason or Dallin is gonna dish it out back, like I'll give them a good chirp too. And
Mhm.
I don't think there is a good one. I won't tell you who said it, but there was a good one that happened actually at Rogue, that I heard that I was like, oh, that was a good one. Um, and it was with Jason and Dallin. Uh, this athlete came off and was telling Dallin something, kind of telling him some tips and secrets. And Jay kind of intervened and said, "Hey, how come you never give me any advice like that? What's up with that?" And the athlete looks over at Jason and says, "Well, Jay, it's because I see something in him."
Oh man. Ooh,
He
wow.
said, I see something special in him," and then
Yeah.
he just left. And
Mm.
it
Yeah,
was
that
just
is
perfect.
chef's kiss. That's good
It's
stuff right there.
delicious. It was like, yeah, you didn't have to say anything else.
Oh,
And it was so good. And we all had a good laugh about it later. So
yeah.
it was awesome. But
That's one where you just take the lump and you walk away. Like, take the L,
yeah,
just don't say a
you
word.
can't come back from that. The
Nope.
conversation was over. It was amazing. So things like that are just fun. And I think it's those guys have a lot of fun with it. And I think it's
Mhm.
kind of revived the vibe in the back a little bit.
Yeah.
Like reminds me of like back in the days with like Josh Bridges and
Mhm.
guys like that who had a lot of fun doing that and ribbing some people and having some banter. And things have gotten very, like, the levels come up, and I would say athletes have become sharper and more professional, and a little bit like there's a little less of that,
Mhm.
because people are kind of in their zone doing their thing. Everybody's so programmed that you sometimes lose a little bit of that flavor back there. So it's nice to see it come out, and we see it more actually outside of the games at events like Rogue or things
Yeah.
like that, where it's like there's a little bit less stress
Mhm.
generally in the gang. So it is fun to see it. It's good to see the personalities come out like that.
I feel like as routine and as organized and squared away as Fikowski is, that he would be, that's just like
He can be cutting.
red
He's
meat
got
for
a
the
good
stars.
wit.
Yeah.
He's got a sharp wit. He can cut some people down.
All right. Last question I have for you is that we mentioned that the good run that you've had recently, the podium finishes and everything like that. You're going into I think this is your 9th individual appearance.
Mm-hmm.
You're towards the back half of your career. I mean, I don't think that's
half is generous.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to keep it
oh
positive.
God, I gotta do another 9.
Yeah. No. So if you do not stand on top of the podium in your career, and then you call it quits at some point, will there be an emptiness there for you, or do you think that you will be satisfied with what you were able to accomplish?
A complete waste of a life.
I think that's
No, I think that there's a lot of factors that go into winning outright. And I have won outright at a lot of events over the course of my career. It would be sweet if I did it, but I think it would be kind of a bonus. I don't think that I need anything else from the CrossFit Games in my career to be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to peter out and compete, 3 more years coming 30th, but I think that I'm extremely satisfied with what I've done in my career so far. I think I've I've done everything I needed to do, everything I ever would have hoped for and more, I would say. So I think that there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that but for a few different bounces, maybe it could be different. And it's just the way it is. That's how sports is. You can't complain about it too much. And I think to look back on it and feel like, oh, what a shame, what a waste, it would be silly. Like, I think even to go to the games multiple years is like you get to have a cool experiences and meet cool people and stuff like that. And I'm too competitive to be satisfied with just that. But I've had a very successful competition reign at the CrossFit Games and outside of it. So, it's really, the whole thing in general is like a second life. Like, I didn't grow up like some of the teen athletes now, like with aspirations of being at the CrossFit Games. Like, I had no clue what CrossFit was until I was like 24.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started doing it, and then I've had this like whole awesome side quest in my life that's gone pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've had this, I thought about this like back in 2020 when COVID happened, and there was a lot of turbulence in CrossFit, and we weren't sure kind of, oh, are the games going to happen? And if they get canceled, like, is it going to come back in the same way? And chatting about it just in our family, being like, hey, if the whole thing goes away now and it never comes back, like, what would you say about it and how would you feel about it? And I'm like, I feel pretty good about it. Like, that wasn't it's a pretty sweet extra thing that I got to do. And then I would just carry on living my life and be perfectly happy. Right. So I don't think you can look back and have regrets. I don't think that's the way I compete. I don't think it's the way I live. I think that you just have to do your best when it's the time. And then once the time's done, I don't resent the people who've beaten me, and I don't expect that the people who I've beaten resent me either, but it's just the way it is. Right. So, that said, I would want to win. I think there would be nothing better than to like finish the career with a win somewhere. But at the same time, I'm also not getting younger. Right. Like, and like you said, the field is getting better and better. Like, are the odds getting worse? Yeah, maybe. But I can still compete at a pretty high level. And like, I won Rogue last year, and
Yeah.
I've shown that I can still hang with the guys who are much younger than me. So I think it's fine. At this point, I'm trying to just treat every year that I have remaining on floors like that as like, it's all bonus. Do everything you can when you're out there, but try to enjoy it more. I think the last maybe 5 years of my career, I've been maybe not too focused, but I've been very, very focused on like outcomes and maximizing wherever I can. And I think I sometimes don't stop to smell the flowers and actually enjoy what I'm doing for what it is. And I'm trying to make more of a conscious effort now of like actually doing that and like kind of enjoying the in-between time. And so, I think it's not gonna, I don't know how to turn that off on the competition floor. So I don't think it's going to affect me in any way competitively, but I think just reminding myself more and more that like, this is a cool thing that we're doing, and not everybody gets to do it, and enjoy the opportunities while they're here. That's kind of more what I'm looking for in the next few years. And then, hopefully sometimes you take the pressure off and the wins roll in, so hopefully I get some of that.
Well, regardless of what happens from here on out, if there were a CrossFit Hall of Fame, you'd be a first ballot, inductee
I
into it.
appreciate that.
It's been an absolute pleasure watching you, over these past 10 years, 9 years as an individual, and then that 1 year you had as a team. And I know you have a ton of fans out there who are pulling for you, and really looking forward to seeing what you do in Texas, man. Thanks so much for taking the time.
I'll do my best. I'll try not to get heat stroke or something.
All right, thanks a lot, Pat.
See you later.